There are many criticisms of The Acolyte, ranging from it breaks lore all the way to it's just woke garbage. But today we're going to be looking at specifically the writing and how the mechanism of plot twists in this show completely falls flat. If you are here looking for a rant video, you've come to the wrong place. Instead, this is going to be a deep dive into 3 of the major plot twists that came along in the Acolyte show that fall completely flat.
Force will be with you.
A plot twist is a revelation or a story event that changes something regarding the plot. Usually it's unexpected and something that wasn't necessarily seen coming. It can change how we perceive characters in the show, and it can change the expectations or subvert our expectations, which isn't always a bad thing. And there are so many examples of where this is done really well. Possibly one of the best plot twists of all time comes in the movie Fight Club.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Spoilers, if you haven't seen the movie Fight Club, I'd skip ahead. I'll throw it right here to the timestamp if you don't want the movie spoiled. Fight Club is a story that follows an unnamed narrator who is struggling with insomnia and dissatisfaction with his consumer-driven life. He attends support groups for various ailments to relieve his emotional pain. The plot then thickens when the narrator meets Tyler Durden, a charismatic soap salesman with a radical philosophy about masculinity and consumer culture. Together, they start an underground fight club as a form of male bonding and a way to express their frustrations. As the fight club grows, it evolves into a larger organization called Project Mayhem, aimed at disrupting society. The twist in Fight Club comes when it's revealed that Tyler Durden is actually a projection of the narrator's split personality. The narrator himself has been Tyler all along, a manifestation of his repressed desires and frustrations. This twist shows that everything Tyler has done, including the creation of Project Mayhem, was a result of the narrator's own actions and decisions. The revelation is significant because it forces the narrator to confront the depth of his mental struggles and his need for change. The story ends with the narrator attempting to free himself from Tyler's influence and reclaim his own identity, symbolized by his efforts to destroy the chaotic legacy Tyler has left behind. This plot twist was shocking, and most did not see it coming, though there were clues all along. And what did it do? It forced you to go back and watch the movie again to see what you missed, the little clues here and there that all of a sudden look genius. Now let's compare that to May and Osha. From the very opening scene, this twins reveal was kind of just done in a super lame way. Now, because of the way that casting was done and things were talked about on the lead up to the show, even going in, we already knew there were twins. So the plot twist of there being twins was completely shot. It kind of set up the rest of the show to not really have this back and forth between May and Osha to be that big of a surprise, and they tried to set up a few different elements to make us think that May was always going to be the one that turns to the dark side. But in the end, it's Osha. It's Osha who is struggling to use the Force throughout the whole show, who all of a sudden is the one who turns to the dark side, who kills Soul, and ultimately joins Chimere as the true Acolyte. This was set up to really be the entire big twist of the whole show, because it made us at the beginning try to think that May was the Acolyte, but really it was all about Osha. So why does this fall flat? Well, ultimately this falls flat because the stakes weren't made high enough. Think about the intensity and the craziness that happened in the movie Fight Club. Compare that with The Acolyte. Really, there was nothing that really made us that interested into these different characters. And the way in Fight Club that these characters interacted made us think that they were real characters. They did things in the story to intentionally deceive us. And we fell for it. We fell for it hook, line, and sinker. But there was nothing in the Acolyte that was deceptive. We could see it all coming from a mile away. And that really is the first problem with the plot twists in the Acolyte. They're obvious. Now, before we move on to the other plot twists, I want to give another example of a really good plot twist in the movie The Prestige. Again, you know the drill. If you've not seen the movie, jump ahead to this timestamp. The Prestige is a film directed by Christopher Nolan based on the novel by Christopher Priest. The movie is a psychological thriller that delves into the competitive world of stage magic in the late 19th century. The story centers on two rival magicians, Robert Angier, Hugh Jackman, and Alfred Borden, Christian Bale. Their competition starts with a tragic accident during one of their performances, which leads to the death of Angier's wife. Both magicians become obsessed with outdoing each other. Angier becomes fixated on discovering the secret behind Borden's mysterious and successful trick, the transported man, which appears to defy the laws of physics. To uncover Borden's secret, Angier travels to America and encounters the renowned inventor Nikola Tesla, David Bowie, who helps him create a machine that seems to achieve the impossible. The major twist of The Prestige is revealed toward the end of the film. It's discovered that Borden's trick involves not just one person, but two. Borden has a twin brother who has been living a parallel life and assisting him with his performances. This double life allows Borden to perform his trick flawlessly, creating the illusion of teleportation. Each twin has sacrificed his personal life and identity for the sake of their craft. The twist about Angier's trick is even more profound. Angier's machine does not simply duplicate objects, but actually creates clones. Each performance involves the creation of a new clone of Angier, who is then killed off after each show to maintain the illusion of the trick. The real Angier, who survives the show, lives in secrecy and ultimately dies by his own hand, being replaced by his clone. In the end, the rivalry and quest for supremacy between Angier and Borden led to tragic consequences, showcasing the lengths to which individuals will go for the sake of their obsessions and the price of their sacrifices. And that's what makes The Prestige so good, because not only does it give these major plot twists that set up so well in the first parts of the movie, but it also teaches us something about ourselves and reminds us of the lengths that humans are willing to go to get what they desire, even when it has tragic and horrifying consequences. And so there you have two good examples alongside a not so good example of how you can do a twins plot twist, or kind of a twins. It's one person, not really two. Same thing with The Prestige, where it's two people, not really one. And we saw that in The Acolyte, where this idea of the vergence, and was it really supposed to be that surprising that they weren't really physically twins, but really just two parts of the same whole? That's exactly what was teased as they give this little pithy back and forth poem, that they're really two parts of the same person that somehow were split. But we're not really given the information. We're not really told what has happened. So not only is the twist not explained, it's just kind of left out there, it really wasn't that surprising. And therein lies the problem. There was no setup or tension. Therefore, there was no payoff. Basic 3-act storytelling that just doesn't exist in The Acolyte. Example number 2 is when May turns on Chimere. This was totally a forced point, meaning it felt like the only reason this truly happened was to further the story. It didn't really reveal very much about May, because ultimately throughout this show, May has been changing her mind back and forth, almost in every instance. We've kind of grown accustomed to not really being surprised by anything she does, because none of it makes sense. So when you bring a twist forward, even if it's not the major twist or even intended to be, it still fell flat. When you can look at the way that the show is structured and just go, yep, the only reason you did that is you had to get the plot moved a certain way. And that's what happened. You can say that it was because May knew that Osha was alive, but that makes no sense because then she just turns on Osha again later, back and forth, and it really wasn't that surprising. It didn't really teach us anything new or different about May, and it didn't subvert our expectations. It's just a bad plot twist. Another example of a bad plot twist is the obvious villain. This is where the bad guy ends up being the person everyone thought it was, even though they give a big reveal in the movie or the show. And this is exactly what happened with the reveal of Chimere being the stranger, the Sith Lord, whatever you want to call him. It wasn't that surprising, especially because of the breadcrumbs that were left were just too obvious. They were not clever. They were not hidden. There were not enough other candidates of people that could actually be this stranger. No one else really was introduced into the show that would fit the criteria of this Sith Lord. And so, when he takes off his helmet, surprise or not surprise, everyone saw it coming. Why? Because who else was on the planet with them? Who else had intimate knowledge of where Kalnaka was? Now Kalnaka is dead, and the only other person on the planet that we knew of was Chimere. Yes, there was some little chatter back and forth that it could have been one of the mothers because we didn't see their bodies in the flashback sequences because we didn't get all the information. But ultimately, those just didn't click. They didn't make sense. And even if you go back to the first and second episode, you can see just the way that Manny Jacinto's character was shown. You knew right away he was the villain. And so the obvious villain plot twist falls completely flat. Now I can already hear some of the comments pushing back, say you're comparing the Acolyte to the Prestige and Fight Club. Yes, because what I'm saying is you can do good plot twists around villains, around twins. You can set up story in such a way to really wow and surprise the audience. But that's exactly the opposite of what we've got in the Acolyte. The only wows we've got are how incredibly bad the writing has been. But that's just plot twist. There's still so many other avenues to explore with the horrible writing in the show, The Acolyte. And if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe because I'm going to be going through some of the others, particularly the bad dialogue. And ultimately, when we got that last episode and the first season of Acolyte was finished, it was pretty obvious there was nothing about this show that was ultimately really that successful in subverting expectation and really wowing the audience.